Imagine this. You are standing at the precipice of a vast, churning sea, its depths mirroring an abyss within. The waves crash with relentless fury, each crest a whisper of promises, each trough a gulp of despair. This is the landscape of addiction, a monstrous entity that often wears the mask of a comforting friend, a soothing balm, or an exhilarating escape. It begins subtly, a gentle current pulling you further from the shore, until suddenly, you find yourself adrift, the familiar landmarks of your true self fading into the mist. This is not merely a physical craving. It is a profound psychological entanglement, a dance with a shadow self that promises solace but delivers only deeper entrapment. The initial allure, the fleeting euphoria, casts a long, deceptive shadow over the very soul, obscuring genuine joy and authentic connection. It is the insidious whisper that tells you, this is what you need. This is where true comfort lies, even as it systematically dismantles the foundations of your well-being. Consider Elara, a woman whose days were once filled with the vibrant hues of creativity and an unyielding zest for life. Her laughter was a melody, her presence a beacon of warmth. Yet, beneath this radiant exterior, a quiet storm brewed, a silent ache that no amount of success or adoration seemed to quell. This ache, unacknowledged and unexamined, became the fertile ground for a subtle addiction to take root, not to a substance, but to validation. Elara had always been a high achiever, her self-worth inextricably linked to external praise and the approval of others. From a young age, her parents, well-meaning though they were, inadvertently cultivated this dependency by showering her with accolades only when she excelled, inadvertently teaching her that her inherent worth was conditional. Every award, every promotion, every commendation served as a temporary salve, a fleeting hit of dopamine that momentarily silenced the gnawing insecurity within. One pivotal moment in Elara's life illustrates this intricate dance with her shadow. It was the night of a grand exhibition, showcasing her latest collection of intricate textile art. The gallery buzzed with anticipation, her name whispered among the discerning crowd. She should have been elated, basking in the culmination of months of tireless dedication. Instead, a hollow echo resonated within her. She found herself scanning the room, not for genuine connection, but for the faces of influential critics, for the glint of approval in their eyes. A renowned art critic, notoriously difficult to impress, paused before her most complex piece. Elara's heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat of anxiety. She imagined his every thought, projecting her deepest fears onto his impassive expression. When he finally offered a curt nod and moved on without a word, a wave of cold despair washed over her, eclipsing the triumph of the evening. The masterpiece, her labor of love, suddenly felt worthless. The external validation, her drug of choice, had been withheld, and the withdrawal was immediate and excruciating. This seemingly minor interaction became a catalyst, pushing Elara further into the labyrinth of her unaddressed needs. She began to chase recognition with a desperate fervor, taking on more projects than she could manage, constantly seeking new audiences to impress. Her art, once an expression of her soul, became a tool for external gratification. She neglected her own well-being, sacrificing sleep, healthy relationships, and genuine creative exploration for the fleeting high of applause. Her friendships, once deep and reciprocal, became transactional. She gravitated towards those who offered effusive praise, inadvertently pushing away those who offered genuine, unconditional support. The addiction to validation manifested in a relentless self-criticism, where every perceived flaw became a monumental failure, every minor setback a catastrophic defeat. She became a prisoner of the external gaze, her inner world mirroring the volatile fluctuations of public opinion. The vibrancy that once defined her began to dim, replaced by a restless anxiety and a pervasive sense of emptiness. The monstrous grip of her addiction tightened, not with chains, but with silken threads of perceived necessity, convincing her that this relentless pursuit was the only path to significance. Her soul yearned for authentic connection, for the quiet peace of self-acceptance, but the clamor for external affirmation drowned out its gentle whispers. Elara's journey is a poignant reflection of the hero archetype entangled in a challenging internal conflict. Her initial quest for creative expression morphed into a perilous descent into the shadow realm of external validation, driven by an unacknowledged wound of self-worth. The theme that resonates throughout her experience is the pervasive human tendency to seek outside ourselves for what can only be found within. Her character, complex and multifaceted, embodies the universal struggle with the ego, a part of the psyche that, while essential for navigating the world, can become inflated and dangerously reliant on external affirmation if left unchecked. Her struggle illuminates the profound insight of Carl Jung, who posited that the shadow is not merely a dark repository of negative traits, but also a reservoir of unacknowledged potential and repressed aspects of the self. Elara's shadow was not her desire for excellence, but her desperate need for external validation, which stifled her true creative spirit and authentic self. It is a potent reminder that what we perceive as weaknesses can often be distorted manifestations of undeveloped strengths. For you, too, this narrative holds a mirror. Where in your own life do you seek external validation to soothe an inner wound? Are there areas where you surrender your innate worth to the fickle judgments of others? The path to healing, the journey of individuation, begins with an honest confrontation of these shadow aspects. It demands a fearless introspection, a willingness to pull back the curtain on the subtle addictions that may govern your choices. Dare to explore the depths of your inner landscape, to identify the unmet needs that drive your relentless pursuit of external approval. For only when you acknowledge the monster that whispers promises of false comfort can you begin to reclaim your inherent power and embark on the transformative journey towards authentic self-acceptance. Have you ever found yourself caught in a relentless cycle, a self-defeating loop where your actions, despite your best intentions, lead you back to the very pain you seek to escape? This is the insidious trap of the unexamined wound, the echo of past experiences that reverberates through your present, shaping your responses and dictating your perceived limitations. It is the invisible force that pulls you towards familiar patterns, even when those patterns lead to predictable suffering. This cycle, often fueled by deeply ingrained beliefs about yourself and the world, becomes a kind of psychological addiction, a compulsion to replay old narratives, however painful, because they are known. The journey to liberation begins with recognizing these patterns, understanding their origins, and daring to consciously choose a different path, one that leads to genuine healing and profound transformation. Carl Jung, with his profound understanding of the human psyche, once articulated, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This powerful statement serves as a compass for navigating the treacherous waters of addiction and self-defeating cycles. It's not about wishing away the shadows or pretending they don't exist, but rather about bringing them into the light of awareness. It's about confronting the very aspects of ourselves that we find uncomfortable, shameful, or terrifying. In Elara's story, her addiction to external validation stemmed from a deeper, unaddressed wound. A primal fear of not being enough, of being unlovable without constant affirmation. This fear, a part of her personal shadow, was never consciously acknowledged. Instead, it operated from the subconscious depths, compelling her to seek external solutions for an internal void. The darkness Jung speaks of can manifest in many forms: past traumas, unfulfilled childhood needs, societal conditioning that teaches us to seek worth outside ourselves, or even inherited psychological patterns from our ancestral lineage. For Elara, the early conditioning that linked her worth to achievement created a fragile ego structure. When that external validation was threatened or withheld, the deep-seated fear of inadequacy would flare, triggering an almost compulsive need to reestablish her perceived worth. This wasn't a conscious choice. It was an automatic, almost instinctual response, driven by the unacknowledged shadow of her self-doubt. Consider the pervasive nature of this unconscious drive. It's like a puppet master pulling strings from behind a veil. You might logically understand that external validation is fleeting, yet emotionally, you find yourself chasing it relentlessly. This schism between logical understanding and emotional compulsion is precisely where the shadow operates. It thrives in the unexamined, the unacknowledged. To truly heal, one must descend into these depths, not with judgment, but with courageous curiosity. What stories does your inner critic tell you? What fears lurk beneath your most persistent struggles? These are not weaknesses to be suppressed, but rather invitations to deeper self-understanding. The journey of making the darkness conscious also involves understanding the concept of projection. When we fail to integrate aspects of our own shadow, we often project them onto others. Elara, in her desperate need for external approval, might have inadvertently projected her own self-criticism onto the art critic, believing he saw her as inherently flawed, when in reality, his brief nod might have been an acknowledgement of her skill. Similarly, individuals struggling with addiction often project their internal turmoil onto the substance or behavior, believing the source of their problems lies outside themselves, rather than within the unaddressed emotional landscape. They might blame the drug, the circumstances, or other people, avoiding the discomfort of confronting their own inner demons. This process of projection further perpetuates the cycle. If Elara believes the world is constantly judging her, she will continue to seek more and more external reassurance, trapped in a relentless pursuit of an impossible ideal. If an individual believes their addiction is solely an external problem, they will continually seek external solutions, never quite addressing the underlying psychological roots. The profound shift occurs when you realize that the external monster you're facing often mirrors an internal one. The addiction monster isn't just the substance or the behavior. It's the unaddressed pain, the unloved self, the repressed emotion that seeks an outlet, however destructive. Healing from these deep-seated patterns requires a willingness to sit with discomfort, to observe the patterns without judgment, and to consciously choose different responses. It demands self-compassion, a concept championed by psychologists like Carl Rogers, who emphasize unconditional positive regard. This means extending the same kindness and understanding to yourself that you would offer a cherished friend. It means acknowledging your struggles without shaming yourself for them. For Elara, this would involve recognizing that her need for validation stemmed from a legitimate human desire for belonging and acceptance, but that its expression had become distorted. It would mean gently challenging the ingrained belief that her worth was conditional and slowly, deliberately, nurturing an internal sense of value. The transformative power of this approach lies in empowering the individual. It shifts the locus of control from external forces to internal agency. You begin to understand that while past experiences may have shaped you, they do not have to define your future. This is the essence of individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated self, where conscious and unconscious aspects are brought into harmony. It means understanding your unique psychological makeup, embracing your paradoxes, and consciously moving towards a state of authenticity. It is a long, often challenging journey, but one that promises profound freedom from the shackles of old wounds and compulsive behaviors. You possess the innate capacity for self-awareness and healing. The whispers of the addiction monster, however loud, are not your true voice. Listen instead to the quiet, persistent wisdom of your inner self, guiding you towards wholeness. What unconscious patterns are you ready to bring into the light? What unacknowledged pain is ready to be healed? The power to break the cycle lies within your conscious choice. What if the very struggle you face, the formidable addiction monster, is not an adversary to be vanquished outright, but rather a distorted messenger, carrying vital insights about your deepest self? This perspective, rooted in the wisdom of ancient philosophy and modern psychology, invites us to reconsider our relationship with pain and challenge. It suggests that within every obstacle lies a hidden opportunity for growth, a profound revelation waiting to be unearthed. The final transformative step in facing any addiction, whether to a substance, a behavior, or an external validation, is to embrace the journey of individuation, not as a battle against a foe, but as an alchemical process of integrating all parts of yourself, even the ones you deem undesirable, into a unified, authentic whole. This is where the wisdom of Stoicism converges with Jungian psychology, offering a path to inner peace not through control of external circumstances, but through mastery of the internal landscape. Consider the timeless words of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This profound insight offers a radical reframing of the addiction monster. Instead of viewing it as a roadblock, a debilitating force, we begin to see it as a demanding teacher, revealing the very areas within us that require attention and healing. For Elara, her addiction to validation, once perceived as a humiliating weakness, became the unlikely conduit to her deepest self-discovery. After the gallery incident, where the art critic's indifference plunged her into despair, something shifted. The pain was so acute, so familiar in its agonizing emptiness, that it finally broke through the layers of her carefully constructed facade. One dreary afternoon, as Elara sat amidst her unfinished canvases, the vibrant colors now seeming dull and lifeless, she felt an unbearable weight pressing down on her. The phone rang. It was a gallerist from another city, offering her a prestigious solo exhibition. This was precisely the kind of validation she had craved, the kind that once would have sent a surge of adrenaline through her veins. Yet, this time it brought only a profound fatigue. The endless chase had exhausted her soul. She politely declined the offer, a decision that shocked even herself. This seemingly small act of refusal was a revolutionary step, a quiet rebellion against the external forces that had dictated her worth for so long. It was the first conscious choice rooted in her inner landscape, rather than the clamor of external expectations. This pivotal moment led her to seek solace not in another project, but in solitude. She began to meditate, to simply sit with the discomfort, the gnawing anxiety, the deep-seated fear of insignificance that had driven her relentless pursuit of approval. In those quiet moments, she started to hear the whispers of her anima, the feminine archetype within her unconscious that yearned for connection, for nurturing, for authentic self-expression rather than performance. She realized that her art had become a performance for others, rather than a genuine outpouring of her soul. The creative block she had experienced for months was not a lack of talent, but a psychic protest against the exploitation of her sacred creative energy for external gain. Elara started painting not for an audience, but for herself. Her brushstrokes became more fluid, more intuitive, less constrained by the imagined gaze of critics. She revisited old sketchbooks, finding pieces that were raw, imperfect, yet brimming with a genuine passion she had long suppressed. She reconnected with friends who offered unconditional love, not just praise. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to dismantle the elaborate edifice of external validation she had built, replacing it with the solid foundation of self-worth. This was the essence of trauma psychology and modern self-worth in action. Acknowledging the wound, understanding its origins, and actively rebuilding the internal sense of value. She realized that the addiction monster was not a separate entity, but a part of her own unintegrated shadow, crying out for attention, for healing, for integration. The process was not linear. There were days when the old anxieties would resurface, when the siren song of external applause would tempt her. But now, armed with self-awareness and a growing sense of inner fortitude, she could observe these urges without being consumed by them. She learned to acknowledge the desire for validation, to understand its historical roots, and then to gently redirect her focus inward. This was her practical application of Stoicism, not repressing emotions, but understanding their nature and choosing her response. She realized that true power lay not in controlling how others perceived her, but in controlling her own internal narrative. Elara's transformation illustrates that facing the addiction monster is ultimately an act of radical self-acceptance. It's about understanding that the seemingly negative aspects of your personality, the compulsions, the insecurities, the cravings are not flaws to be eradicated, but exiled parts of yourself yearning for integration. As Carl Rogers would advocate, it is through unconditional positive regard for oneself that genuine growth occurs. When you offer compassion to your own wounded parts, when you cease the internal battle, you create the space for healing and wholeness. This journey of individuation, of becoming the most complete version of yourself, is not about becoming flawless. It's about embracing your imperfections, integrating your shadow, and standing authentically in your own power. You are not defined by your past struggles, but by your courage to face them, to learn from them, and to integrate their lessons into a richer, more compassionate self. What if the pain you carry is not a burden, but a gateway to a deeper understanding of your own strength? What if the addiction monster is not here to destroy you, but to guide you back to your true self? The power to transform resides within you, waiting to be unleashed. Embrace the stillness, listen to the whispers of your soul, and reclaim your inherent worth. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with other friends to spread valuable insights in life. Thank you for listening. The END.